Marcus Reed, a black lawyer in a crisp suit, steps onto the Silver Crescent train in Chicago, clutching his first-class ticket to New York. He eases into his seat, but a shrill voice slices the air. "You don't belong here." Clara Henshaw, a white attendant, charges at him, accusing him of theft. She yanks his arm, dragging him toward the exit as passengers stare. The train jolts forward, leaving Marcus dangling off the platform, humiliated. What's next for a man already pushed too far? Hey, where are you watching from? If you stand for justice, hit like, subscribe, and join us for more stories that fight the good fight. Marcus Reed's fingers grip the edge of the Silver Crescent's platform, his polished shoes scraping against the metal as the train's sudden lurch nearly flung him into the Chicago dusk. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from a simmering fury that had been stoked one too many times. With a grunt, he hauled himself back aboard, his navy suit now streaked with grime, his tie askew. The first-class car buzzed with whispers as passengers craned their necks, some clutching leather bags, others fumbling for their phones. Clara Henshaw stood at the aisle's end, her attendant's uniform starched to perfection, her blonde hair pulled tight in a bun that matched the sneer twisting her lips. "I told you," she spat, her voice cutting through the hum of the train like a knife through silk. "You don't belong here." Marcus straightened, brushing dirt from his sleeve, and met her glare with a calm that belied the storm brewing inside him. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his ticket, and held it up. The bold print of First Class Seat 7B glinting under the cabin lights. "This says I do," he replied, his tone steady as steel. Clara's eyes narrowed, her pale cheeks flushing as if the paper itself insulted her. She snatched it from his hand, her manicured nails grazing his skin, and scanned it with a scowl. "This is a fake," she declared, tossing it back at him like trash. "You think you can fool me?" The accusation landed like a slap, and the car grew quieter, the air thick with anticipation. A woman in a red coat muttered to her husband, "She's right." He looks out of place, while a young guy in a hoodie pulled out his phone, the camera's red light blinking as it captured every second. Marcus didn't flinch. He stepped forward, closing the gap between them, and planted himself in 7B, the plush seat creaking under his weight. "Check it again," he said, his voice low but firm, "because I'm not moving." Clara's sneer morphed into a snarl, her arms crossing tight across her chest. "You're making a mistake," she hissed, then spun on her heel, her shoes clicking against the polished floor as she stormed toward the front of the car. Marcus exhaled, leaning back, his fingers tracing the ticket's edges. He'd been here before, not on a train, but in courtrooms, boardrooms, even grocery stores, places where his presence alone seemed to spark suspicion. He glanced out the window, the city lights blurring past, and told himself this would blow over. He was wrong. Minutes later, the door to the car swung open with a clang, and a hulking security guard lumbered in, his badge glinting like a warning. His buzzed head shone under the lights, and his meaty hands flexed as he zeroed in on Marcus. "You," he barked, his voice a gravelly rumble. "Up now." Marcus held up the ticket again, slower this time, letting the guard see every detail. "This is my seat," he said, keeping his cool even as his pulse quickened. The guard didn't even glance at it. "Got a report of disorderly conduct," he grunted, stepping closer, his shadow swallowing Marcus's frame. "You're coming with me." The car erupted in murmurs, the woman in red nodding approvingly while the hoodie guy zoomed in, whispering, "This is wild." Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but before the words could form, the guard's hand shot out, grabbing his collar and yanking him to his feet. The ticket fluttered to the floor, and in one swift motion, the guard slammed Marcus against the window, the glass shuddering from the impact. Pain flared through his shoulder, but he bit it back, his jaw clenched tight. "I'm not resisting," he said, loud enough for the phones to catch it. The guard smirked, an ugly twist of his lips, and pulled out a pair of cuffs. "Doesn't matter," he muttered, snapping the metal around Marcus's wrists. The cold steel bit into his skin, and he felt a trickle of warmth, blood welling up where the edges dug too deep. Passengers gasped, some turning away, others leaning closer, their screens glowing with the unfolding drama. Clara reappeared, hovering at the guard's elbow, her eyes glinting with triumph. Told you he didn't belong, she said, her voice dripping with venom. The guard tightened the cuffs another notch, deliberately slow, and leaned in close, his breath hot against Marcus's ear. Should have stayed in your place, boy, he whispered, the slur slicing through the air like a blade. Marcus's stomach twisted, but he kept his face blank, refusing to give them the reaction they craved. The guard hauled him toward the door, his boots thudding against the carpet, and Marcus stumbled, his wrists screaming from the pressure. He'd shown the ticket, proven his right to be there, and for a fleeting moment, he'd thought that would be enough. But as the guard's grip tightened and Clara's smirk widened, he realized this wasn't about a seat anymore. It was about something older, uglier, something that wouldn't let go without a fight. The car door slammed shut behind him, muffling the chatter of the passengers, and he was alone in the narrow corridor, the cuffs cutting deeper with every step. He'd stood his ground, but the cost was already climbing, and the train hadn't even left Illinois yet. Marcus Reed stood in the Silver Crescent's narrow corridor, his wrists throbbing where the cuffs had bitten into his flesh, the metallic tang of blood faint in the air. The guard had shoved him against the wall one last time before a sharp voice cut through the haze. "That's enough," it said, firm but clipped, and Marcus turned to see a man in a pressed gray suit stepping forward, his silver hair gleaming under the dim lights. Edwin Voss, the train supervisor, held a tablet in one hand, his brow furrowed as he scanned the screen. The guard stepped back, grumbling, while Clara Henshaw lingered nearby, her arms crossed, her smirk barely concealed. Marcus rubbed his wrists, the red welt stark against his skin, and handed over his ticket again, this time to Edwin. "Seat 7B, he said, his voice steady despite the ache pulsing through his shoulder. "First class, paid in full." Edwin's eyes flicked between the ticket and his tablet, his fingers tapping swiftly. The car door creaked open behind them, letting the murmur of passengers spill into the corridor, their phones still glowing, with footage of the scuffle. "Everything checks out," Edwin said at last, his tone stiff with reluctant admission. He shot a glance at the guard. "Uncuff him." The guard hesitated, his jaw tightening, but he complied, the cuffs clicking. Open with a grudging slowness, Marcus flexed his hands, blood rushing back into his fingers, and met Edwin's gaze. "Appreciate it," he said, keeping it short. Edwin nodded curtly. "My apologies, Mr. Reed. This shouldn't have happened." He turned to Clara, his expression hardening. "We'll discuss this later." Clara's smirk faltered, her lips pressing into a thin line, but she said nothing, retreating toward the galley with a stiff gait. Marcus exhaled, rolling his shoulders as he stepped back into the first-class car. The passengers watched, some whispering, others tapping their screens, but he ignored them, sinking into 7B with a quiet resolve. The plush seat felt like a small victory, a moment to breathe after the storm. He pulled out his phone, checking, the live stream comments rolling in. "This is insane. Fight back, man." For once he thought it was over. The train hummed along, the Chicago skyline fading into the distance, and he let himself relax, believing the worst had passed. How wrong could one man be? Barely 30 minutes later, the train jolted to a stop, the brakes screeching against the tracks. Marcus's head snapped up, his gut tightening as the overhead lights flickered. Edwin's voice crackled through the speakers, calm but edged with urgency. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've made an unscheduled stop due to a security concern. Please exit the train in an orderly manner for a brief sweep." Passengers groaned, gathering their bags, but Marcus caught the way Edwin's eyes darted toward him from the front of the car. This wasn't random. He stood joining the shuffling line, his ticket still clutched in his hand. Outside, the platform was a small, desolate stretch of concrete somewhere in Indiana, the night air biting at his skin. Uniformed security swarmed the area, their flashlights slicing through the dark. Edwin approached, flanked by two guards, his face a mask of professionalism. "Mr. Reed," he said, voice low, "we received an anonymous tip that you're a threat. We need to search you." Marcus's jaw clenched, but he nodded, spreading his arms. "Go ahead." The guards patted him down, rougher than necessary. their hands digging into his pockets, his bag, even his shoes. Nothing. No weapons, no contraband, just his phone, wallet, and a pack of gum. Edwin's frown deepened, confusion flickering in his eyes, but before he could speak, Clara emerged from the crowd, her voice cutting through the chatter. "I saw him with something earlier," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "A blade, maybe. He's dangerous." The lie hung in the air, bold and shameless, and Marcus's blood ran cold. Passengers turned, their murmurs growing sharper, some backing away, others nodding like they'd expected this all along. "She's lying," Marcus said, his voice rising just enough to carry. "Check the footage. I've been searched already." Edwin hesitated, glancing at Clara, then back at Marcus. "We have to follow protocol," he muttered, motioning the guards to isolate him. They shoved Marcus toward a corner of the platform, away from the others, his bag dumped open on the ground, contents scattered in the dirt. He stood there, hands in his pockets, watching as they tore through his belongings, the live stream still running on his phone, now propped against a bench. The comments exploded. "This is rigged. She's framing him." Minutes dragged into an eternity, the guards finding nothing, their grunts of frustration echoing in the night. Edwin finally waved them off, his shoulders slumping. "Clear," he said, avoiding Marcus's eyes. "You can reboard." Marcus gathered his things, his suit now wrinkled beyond repair, and stepped back onto the train, the weight of every stare pressing against him. He settled into 7B again, his chest tight with a mix of relief and dread. He'd beaten the search, proven her wrong again. But as the train rolled forward, Clara lingered near the galley, her smirk returning, sharper, this time. "You think you're smart," she whispered just loud enough for him to hear. "But I'm not done with you yet." Her words slithered into his mind, a promise of something worse lurking ahead. He'd won this round, or so it seemed, but the victory tasted hollow, tainted by the glint in her eyes. What kind of game was she playing, and how far would she go to win it? "Hey folks, what do you think about Clara's move here? Comment 1 if you think she's crossed a line that can't be uncrossed, or 2 if you believe Marcus should have fought harder right then. If this kind of injustice fires you up, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and stick with us for the next twist. You won't believe what's coming. So, how much deeper can this trap get for Marcus before he breaks free? Or does he?" Marcus Reed sank into seat 7B, the Silver Crescent's plush cushion a fleeting comfort against the sting of his bruised wrists and the memory of Clara Henshaw's smirk. The train rumbled back to life after the Indiana stop, the platform's concrete slab shrinking in the window as night swallowed it whole. His phone buzzed against his thigh, the live stream still trickling with comments, but he ignored it, rubbing his temples to ease the pounding in his skull. The search had cleared him. Edwin's reluctant nod had sent him back aboard, and for a moment he let himself believe the worst was behind him. The car hummed with the low chatter of passengers settling in, their bags rustling, their voices a dull drone. He pulled his jacket tighter, the fabric still damp from the night air, and closed his eyes, willing his heartbeat to slow. Then a shout shattered the calm. "He's dangerous!" The voice was shrill, male, and dripping with venom, cutting through the car like a gunshot. Marcus's eyes snapped open, locking onto a wiry white man in a gray blazer 2 rows ahead. His face flushed red as he jabbed a finger in Marcus's direction. "I saw him earlier. He's trouble." The man's wife clutched his arm, nodding furiously, her pearls glinting as she whispered something sharp. Marcus sat up straighter, his gut twisting. But before he could speak, Clara materialized at the man's side, her uniform pristine, her expression a mask of fake concern. "I told you," she said, loud enough for the whole car to hear. "He doesn't belong here." Her words were a match to dry grass, and the car ignited. A woman in a green scarf stood, her voice trembling with indignation. "He shouldn't be in first class. He's a threat." A bald guy in a polo shirt joined in, his bellow carrying over the seats. "Get him out, I paid for safety." Whispers turned to shouts, a chorus of slurs rising like a wave. "Thug! Lowlife!" Marcus's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists, but he stayed seated, his eyes darting to the phones now pointed his way. red lights blinking in the dimness. He pulled out his own device, hitting record, his voice steady as he spoke into it. "I've got a valid ticket. I've been searched. This is harassment." The gray blazer man lunged forward, his face inches from Marcus's, spit flying as he yelled, "You're a liar!" Clara stepped closer, her lips curling into a thin, triumphant smile, and murmured something to the man that made his eyes gleam. Then it happened. A scalding splash hit Marcus's arm, coffee arcing from a paper cup hurled by a teenage kid egged on by the crowd. Pain seared through his skin, the liquid soaking his sleeve, and he flinched, biting back a curse. The car erupted, passengers cheering the kid on, their voices a roar of approval. "That's right. Show him!" Marcus wiped his arm, the burn throbbing, and stood, towering over the chaos. "I'm not moving," he said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "You've got no proof, just hate." The gray blazer man shoved past Clara, his chest puffed out, and the mob surged, a dozen hands reaching, voices overlapping in a frenzy. "Out! Out! Out!" Someone yanked at his jacket, tearing the seam, while another kicked his bag across the aisle. Marcus held his ground, his phone steady, capturing every snarl, every shove. Clara hovered at the edge, her arms crossed, her eyes glinting with glee as the conductor, a wiry guy named Paul with a clipboard, pushed through the throng. "Enough!" Paul shouted, but his voice shook, his eyes flickering nervously between Marcus and the mob. "We can't have this," he muttered, then turned to Marcus, his tone apologetic but firm. "For your safety, I'm moving you." Marcus shook his head, planting his feet. "I'm staying. This is my seat. My—" Paul hesitated, sweat beading on his forehead, but the crowd's chants grew louder, fists banging on seatbacks. "Do your job." "Get him out," Paul sighed, gesturing to a side door. "Storage car, just till they calm down." Marcus's stomach sank, but he saw no choice, the mob's fury a wall closing in. He grabbed his bag, still filming, and followed Paul, the crowd parting with smug grins. The storage car was a cramped, windowless box, shelves stacked with linens and crates, the air thick with dust. Paul locked the door behind him, muttering, "Sorry, man," before disappearing. Marcus leaned against a crate, his burned arm pulsing, his breath ragged. He'd held his seat, defied them, but now he was caged, the victory snatched away. Then a shadow moved outside the door, and Clara's voice slithered through the crack, low and venomous. "You'll never ride first class again," she whispered, her words a promise wrapped in spite. "This is just the start." The lock clicked, sealing him in, and Marcus's fists clenched, his phone still recording as the train rocked forward. The mob had won this round, or so they thought, but Clara's taunt echoed in his skull, a warning of darker moves ahead. He'd faced down their hate, but the cost was this suffocating cell, and the fight was far from over. Marcus Reed sat on a crate in the Silver Crescent storage car, the air heavy with the scent of stale linens and dust, his burned arm throbbing under the damp sleeve of his suit. The train's rhythmic clatter vibrated through the walls, a iwichi, mocking reminder of his confinement. His phone rested on a shelf, the live stream still running, its battery bar glowing a stubborn green as comments scrolled, "This is outrageous. They can't do this." He flexed his wrists, the welts from the cuffs now crusted with dried blood, and replayed Clara Henshaw's parting shot in his mind. "You'll never ride first class again." The words gnawed at him, a threat too specific to ignore. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and stared at the locked door, the faint hum of the first-class car seeping through. He'd faced the mob, held his ground, and now he was stuck here. But he wasn't done. He tapped his phone, boosting the live stream's audio, and spoke into it, his voice low and firm. "They locked me in here after a fake search and a passenger riot. My ticket's valid, but they don't care. This is what happens when you challenge them." The comments surged, a flood of outrage lighting up the screen, and he felt a flicker of hope. If enough people saw this, they'd have to let him out. Minutes stretched into an hour, the train rocking through the night, and then the lock clicked. The door swung open, revealing Paul, the wiry conductor, his clipboard clutched tight. "You're clear," he said, avoiding Marcus's eyes. Publix, making noise online. Come back to your seat. Marcus stood, grabbing his bag, the weight of his phone a lifeline in his pocket. He stepped into the first-class car, the air cooler, the seat still plush despite the earlier chaos. Passengers glanced up, some with guilt, others with lingering hostility, but no one spoke. Clara was nowhere in sight, her absence a small relief. He sank into 7B, the fabric soft against his battered frame, and exhaled, letting the tension drain. From his shoulders, the livestream comments cheered. "You're back! They can't stop you!" He nodded to himself, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He turned the tide, forced their hand. The train rolled on, the windows dark with rural shadows, and he thought just for a moment that he'd won. Then the brakes squealed, the car lurching to a stop at a small station bathed in flickering sodium lights. Marcus's head snapped, up, his pulse spiking as heavy boots thudded outside. The door burst open and 3 cops stormed in, their badges glinting, their faces hard. "Marcus Reed," the lead one barked, a stocky guy with a buzz cut and a sneer. "You're under arrest." Marcus blinked, his hands raising instinctively. "For what?" he demanded, standing slow to keep them calm. The cop stepped closer, his breath sour with coffee. "Stealing valuables from first class, we've got evidence." Marcus's stomach dropped, his mind racing. "That's impossible," he said, his voice steady despite the dread clawing at him. "I've been locked up half the trip." The cop smirked, pulling a gold watch from his pocket, its face scratched but gleaming. "Found this in your bag." Marcus stared, his blood turning to ice. He'd never seen it before, never touched it. The passengers stirred, whispers rippling. Through the car, and he caught the gray blazer man from earlier nodding smugly, his wife clutching her purse like she'd won a prize. "That's mine," the man called, his voice smug. He took it during the commotion. Marcus shook his head, his fists clenching. "I didn't take anything. Check my live stream, it's all there." The cop waved him off, snapping cuffs on his wrists, the metal colder and tighter than before. "Tell it to the judge," he grunted, yanking Marcus toward the door. The other 2 cops flanked him, their grips bruising as they hauled him onto the platform. Marcus twisted, glimpsing Clara through the window, her silhouette sharp against the galley light. She didn't move, didn't gloat. But he knew. She'd planted it, slipped the watch into his bag during the mob chaos when his things were scattered. The pieces clicked. Her absence after the storage car. Her whispered threat. This was her move, calculated and cruel. The lead cop shoved him against a squad car, the steel frame digging into his ribs, and Marcus bit back a wince. "You've got the wrong guy," he said, loud enough for the passengers craning from the train to hear. "This is a setup." The cop laughed, a harsh bark, and leaned in close, his voice dropping to a hiss. "My cousin Clara says hi." Marcus's breath caught, the connection slamming into him like a fist. Family ties, that's how she'd pulled this off. The cop's buddies were in on it, their smirks mirroring his, and the watch was just the start. They shoved him into the car, the door slamming shut, and the train pulled away, leaving him in the flickering light of a nowhere station. His phone, still live streaming from his pocket, buzzed faintly, the comments a lifeline he couldn't reach. They framed him. This is sick. He'd escaped the storage car, reclaimed his seat, and now he was here, cuffed again, the victory ash in his mouth. Clara's reach was longer than he'd imagined, her revenge sharper, and as the squad car peeled out, he realized this wasn't a mistake. It was a declaration of war, and she'd just drawn first blood. Marcus Reed sat on a hard bench in a cramped holding cell. The squad car's red taillights still burned into his vision as the stale air of the rural Indiana station pressed against him. His wrists ached under the cuffs, the fresh sting of metal, overlaying the old welts, and his burned arm pulsed with every heartbeat. The gold watch, a prop in Clara Henshaw's twisted game, sat in an evidence bag somewhere beyond the bars, a lie he couldn't touch. His phone, confiscated but still live-streaming from his pocket until the battery died, had caught the cop's taunt. "My cousin Clara says hi." That family tie was the key, and Marcus, A lawyer with 8 years under his belt knew how to use it. The cell door clanked open and a deputy with a lazy slouch tossed him a clipboard. "Hearing's in 10, he grunted, then shuffled off. Marcus stood, his suit wrinkled and torn, but his mind sharp as ever. He'd represent himself, turn their setup into his weapon. The courtroom was a squat, wood-paneled box. The judge, a wiry woman with gray curls and a no-nonsense stare, her nameplate reading Judge Harrow. The prosecutor, a thin man with a nasal voice, laid out the charge. Theft of a first-class passenger's watch, supported by the gray blazer man's testimony and the cop's discovery. Marcus rose, his voice steady despite the bruises, blooming across his ribs. "Your Honor, I'm Marcus Reed, attorney at law, and I'm innocent. This is a frame-up rooted in racial bias, and I've got proof." He held up a USB drive, a backup of his live stream he'd kept in his bag, retrieved during booking. Judge Harrow's eyes narrowed, but she nodded. "Proceed." The room hushed as Marcus plugged the drive into a court laptop, projecting the footage onto a screen. The mob chaos flickered to life, passengers hurling slurs and coffee, his bag kicked across the aisle, then the storage car, Clara's whispered threat, and finally the arrest, the cop's sneer clear as day. "That's Officer Henshaw," Marcus said, pointing. "Clara Henshaw's cousin. She planted the watch during the riot and he made sure I paid for it." The gray blazer man squirmed in the witness box, his wife clutching her pearls tighter. The prosecutor sputtered, "This is circumstantial." But Judge Harrow leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "I see a pattern," she said, her voice cutting through the room. "Officer Henshaw, step up." The stocky cop shuffled forward, his smirk gone, replaced by a twitchy frown. "You're related to the train attendant?" she asked. He mumbled, "Yeah, but that's got nothing to do with it." Marcus jumped in, calm but relentless. "It's everything. She orchestrated this to punish me for sitting in first class, a seat I legally own." The footage rolled again, Clara's silhouette at the galley window, the cop's taunt echoing. Judge Harrow's gavel cracked down. "Charges dropped," she snapped, then turned to the cop. "You're lucky I don't haul you in for perjury. Get out." The prosecutor slumped. The gray blazer man shrank in his seat, and Marcus exhaled, a weight lifting off his chest. He walked out of the station, the late morning sun harsh against his battered frame, his suit a ruin, but his spirit intact. Clara's scheme had crumbled, her cousin exposed, and he was free. He caught the next, Silver Crescent, boarding with a new ticket, the platform buzzing with passengers who'd seen the live stream's end. He won. Justice served. He sank into 7B, the familiar plush seat a hard-earned throne, and let himself smile. The train rolled east, the fields blurring past, and he thought he'd beaten her at her own game. Then a new conductor, a lanky guy with a pinched face, approached holding a crisp envelope. "Mr. Reed," he said, his tone flat. "This came from the company." Marcus tore it open, his pulse quickening as he read the typed words. "Due to recent events, your ticket has been canceled. Please vacate your seat at the next stop." His smile vanished, replaced by a cold fury. Clara wasn't on this train, but her shadow loomed large. He called the ticket office, demanding answers, and a clerk stammered, "It's from higher up, sir. A record change." Marcus's mind raced, piecing it together. Clara had bribed someone, slipped cash to a desk jockey to erase his booking, turning his courtroom win into dust. The conductor hovered, insistent. "Next stop, sir." Marcus gripped the armrest, his knuckles whitening. He'd faced her in court, torn her plan apart, and now she'd struck back, silent and sinister, with a move he couldn't fight here. The train slowed, the platform nearing, and he stood, bag in hand, the taste of victory souring fast. She'd lost the battle but rigged the war, and he was out of moves for now. "Hey, what do you make of Marcus turning the tables like that? Comment 1 if you think he's got the grit to keep fighting Clara's dirty tricks, or 2 if you reckon she's got him cornered this time. If you're rooting for him to claw his way back, hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around for the next blow in this wild ride. So, what's Clara cooking up now that she's pulled the rug out from under him again? Marcus Reed stepped off the Silver Crescent at a desolate platform somewhere in Ohio, The forged eviction notice crumpled in his fist, the night air biting at his torn suit. The train's taillights vanished into the dark, leaving him stranded. Under a flickering bulb, the hum of crickets his only company. His phone buzzed faintly, the battery clinging to life after the courtroom live stream. Comments still trickling in. "They can't do this. Fight back, Marcus." He'd beaten. Clara Henshaw in court exposed her cousin's lies, but her bribery had ripped his seat away, a silent gut punch he hadn't seen coming. He slung his bag over his shoulder, the burn on his arm a dull ache, and started toward the station's lone bench, figuring he'd catch the next train. The platform was empty, the ticket office shuttered, and he sank onto the wood, his breath fogging in the chill. He pulled out his phone, tapping out a quick update. "They canceled my ticket, but I'm not done." The post went live, and he leaned back, exhaustion tugging at his bones. He'd proven his point, hadn't he? The world was watching, cheering him on. Maybe that was enough. Then headlights flared in the distance, a pickup truck roaring down a dirt road, its engine a low growl that snapped him alert. He stood, squinting as the truck screeched to a halt, dust swirling around, three figures climbing out. The biggest, one lumbered forward, a hulking silhouette in a sheriff's jacket, his face shadowed but familiar. The buzz-cut cop from the arrest, Clara's cousin. "Well, well," the deputy drawled, his voice thick with menace. "Thought you'd slink away after that stunt?" Marcus's pulse spiked, his bag dropping to the ground as two more stepped up, roughnecks in flannel and boots, their fists already clenched. "I'm not looking for trouble," Marcus said, hands up, but his voice stayed firm. The deputy smirked, cracking his knuckles. "Too late for that, boy." The word hit like a slap, and before Marcus could move, the deputy lunged, slamming him against the station wall, the wood splintering under the impact. Pain exploded in his back, air rushing from his lungs, and the two thugs closed in, their boots crunching gravel. "Clara sends her regards," the deputy snarled, driving a fist into Marcus's gut. He doubled over, gasping, but swung back, his knuckles clipping the deputy's jaw. The big man staggered, spitting blood, and roared, "Get him!" The thugs pounced, one grabbing Marcus's arms, the other landing a boot in his ribs, the crack of bone sharp in the night. Marcus twisted, adrenaline surging, and headbutted the arm grabber, breaking free as the man howled, clutching a busted nose. He stumbled back, blood streaming from his lip, and faced the deputy, who pulled a baton from his belt, its black steel gleaming. "You don't learn, do you?" the deputy hissed, swinging hard. Marcus ducked, the baton smashing the bench. Instead, wood shards flying, and he tackled the deputy, driving him into the dirt. They rolled, fists flying, gravel cutting into Marcus's palms, until he pinned the big man, slamming his head against the ground. The deputy groaned, dazed, and Marcus staggered up, panting, his suit a bloody mess. The other two hesitated, then charged, one swinging a chain that whistled past Marcus's ear. He dodged, grabbing a plank from the wrecked bench, and swung, cracking it across the chain guy's knee. The man crumpled, screaming, and Marcus turned, ready for the last one, who bolted back to the truck, yelling, "He's crazy!" The deputy scrambled up, wiping blood from his chin, and sneered, "This ain't over," before limping to the truck. The engine roared, tires spinning as they peeled out, leaving Marcus alone, chest heaving, the night swallowing their taillights. He spat blood onto the gravel, his ribs screaming with every breath, and limped to the station wall, sliding down it. He'd fought them off, survived, a win carved in bruises and grit. The next Silver Crescent rumbled in an hour later, and he boarded, his new ticket shaky in his hand, the first-class car half empty. He sank into 7B, the seat a lifeline, and closed his eyes, the pain a dull roar. He'd made it back, defied them again. Then Clara appeared at the car's end, her uniform crisp, her face a mask of cold triumph. "You assaulted an officer," she said, her voice loud enough for the few passengers to hear. "And I've got witnesses." Marcus's eyes snapped open, his stomach sinking as two passengers nodded, their phones already out. The deputy's blood on his hands, the fight in the dark. It was all her trap, and she'd turned it into a noose. He'd beaten them off, but she'd been waiting, her revenge a step ahead, and now the law was her weapon again. The train rolled on, the night endless, and Marcus realized she'd never stop, not until he was broken or gone. Marcus Reed slumped in seat 7B of the Silver Crescent, his ribs aching from the midnight beating, blood crusted on his knuckles and staining his torn suit. The train's hum was a dull roar in his ears, drowning out the faint whispers of passengers, eyeing him warily. Clara Henshaw stood at the car's end, her uniform pristine, her accusation still ringing. "You assaulted an officer." Her voice had sliced through the quiet, and two passengers, a middle-aged woman in a blue shawl and a guy with a buzzed head, nodded like they'd rehearsed it, their phones already recording. Marcus's head throbbed, his vision blurring from exhaustion, but he met her gaze, his jaw tight. "You set that up," he said loud enough for the car to hear. "Your cousin ambushed me." Clara's lips twitched, a flicker of triumph, but she stayed silent, letting the passengers' murmurs fill the void. The train rolled on, the night stretching endless, until it screeched to a stop at a small Ohio station, the platform swarming with flashing lights. 4 cops burst in, their boots pounding the carpet, the deputy from the ambush at the lead, his jaw bruised, his eyes blazing. "Marcus Reed," he barked. "You're under arrest for assaulting an officer." Marcus stood, hands up, his voice steady despite the pain lancing his side. "Check the footage," he said, nodding to his phone, now dead in his pocket. "It's self-defense." The deputy smirked, yanking his arms behind him, cuffs snapping tight, the metal biting into his raw wrists. "Tell it to the judge," he growled, shoving Marcus toward the door. The passengers watched, some filming, others turning away, and Clara followed, her steps light, her face a mask of satisfaction. The station's holding cell was a concrete box, the air thick with mildew, and Marcus paced, his mind racing. He'd fought off the ambush, made it back to the train, but Clara had turned it against him, her witnesses primed, her cousin's badge a shield. Hours later, they hauled him to a makeshift courtroom, a dingy room with peeling paint and a judge, in a rumpled robe, his bald head gleaming under fluorescent lights. The deputy testified first, his voice dripping with venom. "He attacked me unprovoked, broke my jaw." The 2 passengers echoed him, the woman clutching her shawl, claiming, "I saw him swing first," while the guy nodded. "He's violent, no question." Marcus rose, his suit a bloody wreck, and faced the judge. "I'm Marcus Reed, attorney, and this is a lie. They ambushed me, 3 against 1, and I defended myself. Clara Henshaw's behind it. Her cousin's the deputy." The judge, tired man named Grayson, squinted at him, then at the deputy. "Evidence?" Marcus pulled his dead phone from his bag, retrieved during booking, and plugged it into a court outlet. The live stream flickered on, shaky footage of the truck roaring up, the deputy's snarl, the baton swinging. The room stilled, the deputy shifting in his seat, Clara's silhouette absent, but her influence screaming through every frame. "That's him," Marcus said, pointing. "Family ties to the attendant who's been targeting me since Chicago." The jury, a mix of locals with weathered faces, leaned forward, their eyes flickering between the screen and the deputy. Grayson rubbed, his chin then turned to the deputy. "You're related to her?" The deputy shrugged, his bruise darkening. "So what? He still hit me." Marcus pressed on, calm but relentless. "It's a setup, Your Honor. She's been framing me from the start, and this is her revenge." The footage looped, the chain whistling past his ear, his plank cracking. "Bone!" and the jury murmured, a tide shifting. Grayson banged his gavel, his voice gruff. "Self-defense holds. Case dismissed." The deputy cursed, slamming a fist on the table, and the passengers shrank back, their phones lowering. Marcus exhaled, the cuffs falling away, and walked out, the morning sun blinding against his battered frame. He'd torn her trap apart, won again. The next Silver Crescent rolled in, and he boarded, ticket in hand, sinking into 7B with a groan, his body a map of bruises, but his spirit unbroken. Passengers whispered, some filming, others posting, "He's free. Clara's done." He closed his eyes, the train lurching east, thinking he'd finally outmaneuvered her. Then his phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Silver. Crescent regrets to inform you your ticket privileges are suspended. You're a liability. Vacate at the next stop. His stomach dropped, his victory curdling. He called the company, voice tight, and a clerk stammered, "It's from corporate, sir. No appeal." Marcus's mind raced, the pieces snapping into place. Clara's uncle, a railroad exec, had stepped in, his influence a sledgehammer where her cousin's fists failed. The conductor approached, apologetic but firm. "Next stop, sir." Marcus stood, bag slung over his shoulder, the car spinning as passengers filmed, outrage exploding online. They blacklisted him. This is insane. He stepped onto a remote Pennsylvania platform, the train pulling away, leaving him, penniless under a gray sky. Clara hadn't been there, but her uncle's move was a masterstroke, a nationwide ban that crushed his win into dust. He'd beaten the trial, but they'd railroaded him out of the system, and now he was stranded. The fight far from over. Marcus Reed stood alone on a windswept Pennsylvania platform, the Silver Crescent's taillights fading into the gray dawn, his blacklisted ticket a useless scrap in his pocket. His suit hung in tatters, blood and dirt caked across the fabric, his ribs a dull ache from the ambush, his burned arm a constant throb. The text from the railroad company echoed in his skull. "You're a liability." Clara Henshaw's uncle had swung the axe, cutting him off from every train in the system, a move that turned his courtroom win into a hollow echo. His phone buzzed faintly, the battery clinging to a sliver of life. Live stream comments still rolling. "They can't get away with this. Marcus, keep going." He clenched his fists, the cold biting his knuckles, and scanned the empty station. Its ticket booth shuttered, the wind howling through cracked windows. He wasn't done, not by a long shot. A freight train rumbled in the distance, its horn, a low wail, and Marcus's eyes narrowed. If they wouldn't let him ride first class, he'd find another way. He slipped into the shadows, his bag slung tight, and darted toward the tracks, the gravel crunching under his shoes. The freight cars loomed, rusted giants stacked with crates, and he spotted a gap between two, the train slowing just enough. He leapt, grabbing a ladder, his bruised hands screaming as he hauled himself aboard. The car rocked, the wind whipping his face, and he wedged himself behind a tarp, heart pounding. Security lights swept the yard, beams cutting through the gloom. But he stayed low, the train lurching forward, carrying him east. His phone trembled in his hand, and he tapped out a plea. "Blacklisted, sneaking on a freight. Need help." The live stream flickered, comments exploding. "You're a legend. Stay safe." Within minutes, supporters sent cash through an app, their messages a lifeline. "Buy a ticket, man." "We've got you." Marcus exhaled, the tarp flapping against his cheek, and waited as the train rolled into a larger depot, its platform buzzing with workers. He slipped off, dodging a guard's flashlight, and used the cash to buy a ticket under an alias, James Carter. His lawyer's brain spinning aliases like second nature. The next Silver Crescent gleamed at the station, and he boarded head down, the first-class car a familiar haven. He sank into 7B, the seat a quiet triumph, his new ticket crisp in his pocket. Passengers glanced his way, some filming, others posting. "He's back. They can't stop him." The train pulled out, the night deepening, and Marcus let himself breathe, thinking he'd outsmarted them. He'd turned their ban into a loophole, slipped through their net. Then the car grew quiet, too quiet, and a chill crawled up his spine. At midnight, the train slowed through a rural stretch, the windows black with forest shadows, and shouts erupted outside. The door banged open, and 6 men stormed in, vigilantes in trucker hats and denim, their faces twisted with rage, bats and chains swinging in their hands. "There's the thief!" one bellowed, a hulking guy with a patchy beard, his bat raised. Marcus bolted up, his ribs protesting, and grabbed his bag, adrenaline surging. "I've got a ticket," he shouted, holding it high. But they didn't care, their eyes wild, their voices a chorus of hate. "You don't belong here. Get him!" The passengers shrank back, some filming, others frozen, and Marcus dodged a bat swing, the wood splintering a seat back. He ducked into the aisle, the chain guy lunging, the lynx grazing his shoulder, tearing fabric and skin. "Clara's uncle sent us," the bearded one snarled, swinging again, and Marcus's blood ran cold. The exec hadn't stopped at a blacklist. He'd unleashed a mob, a new level of vengeance. Marcus sprinted for the bathroom, the car a blur of screams and crashing metal, and slammed the door, locking it as fists pounded the wood. His phone buzzed, the live stream catching glimpses through the chaos, comments frantic. "They're gonna kill him. Where's security?" The door buckled, splinters flying, and Marcus braced it with his shoulder, his breath ragged. He'd hacked their system, reclaimed his seat. But Clara's uncle had hacked something worse, a database breach exposing his alias, turning his escape into a trap. The vigilantes roared outside, their weapons smashing, and Marcus gripped the sink, his mind racing for a way out as the train rocked on, the night a cage closing in. Hey, what do you think of Marcus pulling off that freight stunt? Comment 1 if you're cheering his guts to sneak back aboard, or 2 if you think he's pushed his luck too far now. If this kind of raw fight for justice hooks you, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and stay with us for the next brutal turn. So can Marcus dodge this mob, or has Clara's uncle finally cornered him for good? Marcus Reed pressed his shoulder against the Silver Crescent's bathroom door, the wood groaning under the vigilantes' relentless pounding, splinters dusting the floor like ash. The train rocked through the midnight forest, its hum drowned by the roar of 6 men outside, their bats and chains crashing against the frame, their voices a snarl of hate. "Come out, thief! You're done!" His ribs screamed with every breath, the bruises from the ambush layered with fresh cuts from the chain that had grazed his shoulder. His phone buzzed in his pocket, the live stream flickering, its battery barely alive. Comments, a blur. "He's trapped! Fight back!" The bearded leader's growl cut through. "Clara's uncle wants you gone." And Marcus's jaw tightened, the exec's reach a noose tightening around him. The door buckled, a bat splintering the top panel, and he knew it wouldn't hold. He scanned the tiny space, the sink bolted to the wall, a vent too small to crawl through, and then his eyes landed on a rusted pipe jutting from a broken towel. He yanked it free, the metal cold in his grip, and braced himself. The door exploded inward, the bearded guy charging first, his bat raised high. Marcus swung the pipe, cracking it across the man's wrist, the bat clattering to the tiles as he howled, clutching his arm. The chain guy lunged next, the links whistling, and Marcus ducked, slamming the pipe into his knee, sending him sprawling. With a scream, the passengers' gasps echoed from the car, their phones capturing every blow. But the other 4 pushed in, their boots stomping, their fists swinging. Marcus fought back, the pipe a blur, cracking ribs and noses, blood slicking the floor, but they overwhelmed him, a fist slamming his jaw, another kicking his gut. He stumbled, the pipe slipping, and they shoved him into the aisle, the car a chaos of shouts and flashing lights. He bolted, dodging a chain swing, and spotted an emergency hatch above a seat. He leapt, yanking it open, the night air blasting. His face as he climbed onto the train's roof, the wind roaring, the tracks a blur below. The vigilantes scrambled after him, the bearded one clutching his wrist, bellowing, "You're dead!" Marcus gripped the roof's edge, his shoes slipping on the slick metal. The train speeding through a tunnel ahead, its mouth a black maw. He swung the pipe again, knocking the chain guy back, the man tumbling into his buddies, their curses lost in the gale. The tunnel loomed, and Marcus flattened himself, the ceiling grazing his back as the train plunged through, darkness swallowing the fight. He emerged, gasping, the forest whipping past, and spotted a bridge ahead, its rusted girders a faint outline. The vigilantes regrouped, their bats raised, and he knew he couldn't outlast them here. He sprinted, the wind tearing at his shredded suit, and leapt as the train crossed the bridge, his body arcing through the air, the river below a glinting ribbon. He hit the girders, his fingers clawing steel, his legs dangling, pain searing his ribs as he hauled himself up. The train roared on, the vigilantes' shouts fading, their silhouettes shrinking into the night. He collapsed on the bridge, blood dripping from his lip, his phone buzzing faintly, the live stream catching his leap. He made it! Insane! He'd survived, beaten them off with a pipe and a desperate jump, his chest heaving as the cold bit his skin. Below, headlights flared, a car idling on the riverbank, and Marcus squinted, his gut sinking. Clara Henshaw stepped out, Her uniform swapped for a dark coat, her smirk sharp in the beam. She didn't wave, didn't shout, just watched, her triumph a silent blade. Then the sky rumbled, helicopter blades chopping the air, spotlights slicing through the dark, pinning him on the bridge. "Marcus Reed," a voice boomed from above. "You're under arrest for terrorism." His heart stopped, the word a sledgehammer. Cops rappelled down, their boots thudding on the girders, guns drawn, their faces hard. "Hands up!" one barked, and Marcus raised his trembling arms, the pipe clattering away. The live stream buzzed, comments frantic. "Terrorism? This is a lie!" Clara's smirk widened as the cops cuffed him, the metal biting deeper than ever, and yanked him to his feet. He'd fought off the mob, leapt to freedom, and millions had cheered online. But she'd twisted it, doctored footage from the train fight flashing on their screens, painting him as a madman. The helicopters hovered, the river glinting below, and Marcus stumbled as they dragged him to a rope ladder, his body a wreck, his mind reeling. Clara watched from the bank, her gloating a spotlight of its own, and he realized she'd played, her ace, turning his survival into a death sentence. The cuffs tightened, the chopper's roar swallowed his breath, and he was lifted off the bridge, the fight he'd won slipping through his bloodied fingers. Marcus Reed dangled from the helicopter's rope ladder, the cuffs cutting into his wrists, the wind slashing his shredded suit as the blades thundered above. The bridge shrank below, Clara Henshaw's smirk a fleeting gleam on the riverbank, before the spotlight swallowed her. The cops' boots clomped on the girders, their guns trained on him, the word terrorism still ringing in his ears like a death knell. His phone, confiscated mid-livestream, had caught the rooftop fight, the leap, and now buzzed uselessly in a cop's pocket, its final frames sparking chaos online. "They're framing him. This can't stand." The chopper banked hard, hauling him into its belly, and a burly officer slammed him onto a bench, his ribs screaming from the impact. "You're done, Reed," the officer growled, his badge glinting Sergeant Lyle. Marcus met his glare, blood trickling from his lip, and said, "You've got nothing real on me." Lyle smirked, shoving doctored footage on a tablet under his nose. The train fight edited to show Marcus swinging first, a wild-eyed attacker. "This says different," he spat, and Marcus's stomach twisted, Clara's handiwork clear as day. They landed at a rural airstrip, shoving him into a van, the cuffs chafing his raw skin, and drove to a concrete lockup, its bars cold and unyielding. He sat on a cot, his body a map of bruises, and surrendered, hands up, knowing resistance now would bury him deeper. The cell door clanged shut, the echo a tombstone, but outside the world erupted. His live stream cut short, had gone viral, millions watching the bridge leap, the helicopters, the guns and the comments morphed into a roar. "Free Marcus! This is racism!" Protests flared in Chicago, New York, even the small towns. The train had passed, crowds chanting his name, signs scrawling "Justice for Reed." News vans swarmed the lockup, cameras rolling, and the railroad company's phones rang off the hook, execs scrambling as stock prices dipped. Clara's uncle, Harold Henshaw, faced a press mob, his slick suit rumpled, his voice cracking. "We're investigating." The pressure built, and 3 days later the company caved, reinstating Marcus's ticket privileges with a terse statement. "Due to public concern, we've reversed the suspension." The cell door swung open, a sheepish guard uncuffing him, muttering, "You're free to go." Marcus limped out, the sun blinding, his suit a bloody rag, and caught a ride to the next station, protesters cheering as he boarded the Silver Crescent. He sank into 7B, the seat a battered crown. His phone returned, buzzing with victory. He's back. They couldn't break him. Harold resigned that night. A disgraceful exit splashed across headlines, and Marcus exhaled, the car quiet, passengers filming with awe. He'd survived the bridge, turned the tide, and the world had his back. Then the train shuddered to a halt, brakes squealing in the Pennsylvania dusk, and a conductor's voice crackled overhead. "Emergency stop. Bomb threat reported." Marcus's blood ran cold, his head snapping up as SWAT stormed aboard, their vests black, their rifles glinting. "Marcus Reed!" the lead shouted, a wiry guy with a buzz cut. "You're under arrest." Marcus stood, hands raised, his voice steady despite the dread clawing his chest. "For what now?" The SWAT guy smirked, holding up a tablet, a fake manifesto flashing. "Marcus Reed vows to bomb Silver Crescent for revenge." The passengers gasped, some filming, others scrambling back, and Marcus shook his head. "That's not mine." The SWAT team surged, tasers buzzing, and Clara emerged from the galley. Her coat swapped back for her uniform, her sneer sharper than ever. "I told you I'd win," she hissed, loud enough for the cameras, and the tasers fired, volts searing Marcus's chest. He collapsed, twitching, the car spinning, his phone slipping as comments screamed, "Another setup." "She's evil!" The SWAT hauled him up, cuffs snapping tight, and dragged him off. The manifesto a lie Clara had planted online, her counterattack a sledgehammer after his public win. Protests raged outside, horns blaring, but inside the van, Marcus slumped, his body broken, her triumph a chokehold. He'd rallied the world, forced the company's hand, but she'd struck back, her venom deeper, turning his freedom into a cage. Marcus Reed slumped in the back of a SWAT van, the cuffs biting his wrists, his chest still burning from the taser's jolt. The Silver Crescent's emergency stop a fading echo. The fake bomb manifesto Clara Henshaw had planted online. Marcus Reed vows revenge. Played on a loop in his mind, her sneer as they dragged him off, a knife in his gut. His phone, lost in the chaos, had caught the SWAT raid, the live stream cutting out with his collapse. But the protests outside roared louder, horns blaring through the Pennsylvania dusk, voices chanting his name. The van rocked over potholes, the SWAT team silent, their rifles glinting, and Marcus's head throbbed, blood crusting his lip from the bridge fight, his ribs a jagged ache. He'd rallied the world, forced the railroad to bend, but Clara had flipped it, her lie a guillotine dropping fast. The van screeched into a rural jail, a squat brick box under flickering lights, and they shoved him into a cell, the door slamming with a clang that rattled his skull. He sank onto the cot, his suit a bloody shred, and stared at the concrete, his breath shallow. Hours bled into days, the protests swelling, news helicopters buzzing overhead, their reports a lifeline. Public demands Reed's release. Bomb. Threat a hoax? Then a hacker group, anonymous voices online, struck gold, leaking Clara's emails. "Frame him with this, uncle. Make it stick." The proof hit like a thunderclap, screens flashing her words, her plot, with Harold Henshaw, laid bare. Protests turned to riots, tires burning in Chicago, marches clogging New York, and the jail shook with pressure, the warden sweating as he unlocked Marcus's cell. "You're out," he muttered, tossing him his dead phone, its case cracked. Marcus limped free, the sun searing his eyes, and caught a ride to the next station, crowds parting with cheers, signs waving. "Justice for Marcus!" He boarded the Silver Crescent, ticket reinstated, sinking into 7B, the seat a battered throne. Passengers filmed, some clapping, others posting, "He's back!" Clara's finished. The train rolled east, the car alive with awe. A woman, in a red scarf, pressing a water bottle into his hand, her smile soft. "You're a hero," she whispered, and Marcus nodded, his throat tight, the pain a dull roar. He'd broken her trap, the world's fury his shield, and Clara was nowhere, her uncle's career ash, justice tasting sweet. The train hummed through the night, the windows dark with forest, and Marcus leaned back, his eyes drifting shut, thinking he'd won. Finally. Fully. Then a shadow moved at the car's end, a figure in a black hoodie slipping through the galley door, unnoticed by the celebrating crowd. The train slowed at a quiet stop, a nowhere platform under a single bulb, and the figure stepped closer, a glint of steel flashing in their hand. Marcus's eyes snapped open, his gut lurching. But before he could shout, the gun barked, a silenced shot slicing the air. The bullet grazed his skull, a hot line of fire carving his temple, and he collapsed. Blood pooling on the carpet, his vision swimming. Passengers screamed, phones dropping, chaos erupting as the figure bolted, vanishing into the night. "He's hit!" a man yelled, kneeling beside him, pressing a scarf to the wound, the red fabric soaking fast. Marcus's pulse flickered, his breath shallow, the car spinning as voices overlapped. "Call help!" Who did this? Below the platform, Clara watched from a car, her dark coat blending with the shadows, her lips curling in a final vicious grin. Her uncle, disgraced and desperate, had hired the hitman, a last gasp of revenge after the emails leaked, and she'd guided it, her hand unseen but deadly. The train rocked, passengers scrambling, and Marcus lay still, blood seeping, his faint, pulse a thread in the storm. He'd toppled her system, won the world, but they'd struck back, a bullet to silence him, and Clara's gloating gaze burned into the dark, her triumph a grave dug deep. Marcus Reed woke to the sterile hum of a hospital room, the beep of machines piercing the fog in his skull, his temple a throbbing knot where the bullet had grazed him. His eyes fluttered open, the ceiling tiles a blurry white, his body heavy, under crisp sheets, tubes snaking from his arm. The Silver Crescent's chaos replayed in flashes, the silenced shot, the blood pooling, passengers screaming as the hitman fled. Pain lanced his ribs, his burned arm, every bruise from the past day's screaming. But he was alive, his pulse steady, a miracle stitched together by surgeons. His phone sat dead on a tray, its cracked screen dark, but the world outside buzzed, news trickling through the walls. Reed survives assassination attempt. Railroad exec linked to hit. The door creaked, a nurse in blue scrubs slipping in, her voice soft. You're lucky, Mr. Reed. Cops caught the shooter an hour ago. Marcus turned his head, wincing, and croaked, Who sent him? She hesitated, then said, He's talking. Says it was a guy named Henshaw. Clara's uncle, Harold, the disgraced exec, his final play after the email leak. Marcus's jaw tightened, the pieces clicking, but the nurse added, They're arresting him now. And the attendant, Clara Henshaw, she's been fired, facing charges. He exhaled, a ragged breath, relief washing over him like rain. The hitman's confession unraveled their web. Harold cuffed in his mansion, Clara escorted from her apartment, her uniform swapped for a perp walk, her sneer gone, replaced by a scream as cameras flashed. I did nothing wrong. The hospital TV flickered on, news anchors dissecting it. Conspiracy to murder. Evidence overwhelming. Marcus sank back, the world righting itself, justice clawing through the muck. Then a doctor rolled him to a press room days later, his wheelchair a temporary cage, his suit traded for a gown, scars crisscrossing his skin. Reporters swarmed, mics thrusting, and he spoke, voice steady despite the rasp. I exposed the railroad's rot, from Clara's bias to her uncle's hit. It's not just me, it's everyone they've crushed. We need reform, real change. The room erupted, questions flying, and the railroad's CEO, a gray-haired suit, named Ellison, stepped up, his face grim. We're implementing it, Mr. Reed. New policies, oversight, training, all because of you. Marcus nodded, his eyes hard. The victory bittersweet but real. Then the twist hit. A bombshell no one saw coming. A hacker slipped into the feed, voice distorted. Check the live stream, last frame. Marcus's phone, recovered and charged, lit up, the final footage rolling. Him collapsing, blood pooling, but his hand subtly tapping a code on the floor, a signal he'd planned. He'd orchestrated the leak, tipped the hackers days before, faking the collapse's severity to lure Clara and Harold into overreach. The hit was their mistake. His trap sprung, and the world gasped, reporters shouting, He played them? Genius. Marcus leaned into the mic, his smile faint but steel. I knew they'd go too far. I let them bury themselves. The room stilled, awe rippling, and Ellison stammered, We'll meet your demands, a passenger council, all of it. Outside, Clara's perp walk replayed, her cuffs glinting, her screams drowned by cheers, Harold's mugshot beside hers. There, empire dust. Marcus rolled back to his room, the wheelchair creaking, his body scarred but unbroken, and stared out the window, the train tracks a distant line. He'd turned their bullet into his blade, toppled their system, and sparked a nationwide shift, reforms rolling out as other companies watched, trembling. The Silver Crescent rolled on somewhere, a symbol of his quiet, devastating triumph, and he vowed to keep fighting. The war won, but the scars a map of every battle. Marcus Reed's journey on the Silver Crescent teaches us that dignity isn't loud, it's steadfast. Facing relentless racial injustice, ejections, beatings, frame-ups, and a near-fatal bullet, he didn't scream or crumble. He stood firm, using wit and resilience to turn every attack into a weapon against his oppressors. Clara Henshaw's venom, fueled by bias and power, shows how prejudice festers when unchecked, spiraling from a seat dispute to a murder plot. Yet Marcus's quiet strength flipped her game, proving that real power lies in patience, not rage. His story reveals the ugly truth of systemic racism, where a ticket isn't enough if your skin marks you as other. But it also shines a light on hope. One man's fight sparked a movement, toppling a corrupt empire and igniting reform. We learn that change isn't handed out. It's forged through grit and community, like the millions who rallied for him. Clara's downfall reminds us that actions ripple. Her hate cost her everything, while Marcus's resolve rebuilt a broken system. The lesson? Stand your ground, even when the odds stack high, because truth has a way of rising, slow but unstoppable. So what would you do if you faced Marcus's fight? Comment below if you'd hold fast like him. Hit like if this moved you. Subscribe for more tales of courage, and share to spread the call for justice. Thanks for riding this journey with us. Here's to a world where fairness rolls like a train, steady and strong.